Welcome, friends, and welcome to those of you who have recently joined Gnosis Mysteria. This subject deserved more than a single conversation, which is why I devoted 2 episodes to it. As many of you already know, art has always occupied a special place in my life. Today, I'd like to share a few thoughts on the way colors enter our consciousness, not merely as pigments, but as images that arise long before they become words. When we stand before a painting, we usually search for its story, often reduced to little more than a title. Yet color can speak far more eloquently than language itself. Once we begin to understand its symbolism, we discover that it also changes the way we perceive the ordinary world around us. There is a simple but profound truth that we rarely stop to consider. Everything that enters consciousness first appears as an image. Carl Jung used the word image to describe an inner representation. As he observed, it is as though we either do not know or continually forget that everything we become conscious of is an image, and the image is the soul. The history of color is, in many ways, the history of civilization itself. Every society assigns meaning to colors, develops its own symbolic codes, determines where colors belong, how they should be used, and what they are meant to communicate. Color classifies, warns, distinguishes, evokes associations, and shapes our understanding of the world. It quietly permeates every sphere of human life. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. If we follow the opening verses of Genesis, darkness came before light. It enveloped the world before life existed. Light became the condition that made life possible, fiat lux. Within the biblical narrative, black is therefore the first color to appear, and it is immediately placed in opposition to life itself. In darkness, life cannot flourish. Light is declared good, while darkness becomes its counterpart. In only a few lines, black acquires a symbolic meaning that will echo throughout centuries of Western thought. Curiously, modern science offers a remarkably similar sequence. Replace the act of divine creation with the Big Bang, and astrophysics likewise tells us that darkness preceded light. In the earliest moments of the universe, invisible forms of matter and energy dominated long before the first light could freely travel through space. Yet the earliest symbolism of black was not exclusively negative. It represented primordial origins, fertility, and the hidden potential from which life emerges. In ancient Rome, the laboratories, those whose lives were devoted to labor, were associated with black. The color was linked to caves, deep caverns, chasms, burrows, and every place believed to grant access to the hidden depths of the earth. But caves have always carried a double meaning. They shelter life, yet they also awaken fear. The underworld became associated with suffering, loss, and misfortune. Gradually, black ceased to signify only beginnings and hidden fertility. It also became the color of death, mourning, and human tragedy. Black was the first color in human history whose shades people consciously learned to manipulate. Roman craftsmen distinguished an astonishing variety of blacks: matte and lustrous, soft and harsh, pale and richly saturated. They blended pigments with remarkable precision, searching for subtle nuances rather than a single uniform tone. In medieval art, Many animals were deliberately painted black to signify their association with evil. Ravens, owls, bears, wolves, goats, tigers, and many others. Within the Christian imagination, black gradually became the natural color of darkness, temptation, and every visible manifestation of evil. The image of the devil itself evolved slowly between the 6th and the 11th centuries. For centuries, it remained fluid and difficult to define, but by the beginning of the 2nd millennium, it had acquired the terrifying features of a monstrous beast. His servants, the demons, were imagined in much the same way, their purpose being not merely to represent evil, but to inspire fear and paralysis. From the 13th century onwards, however, black began to acquire new meanings. Heraldry adopted it as one of its formal colors, capable of conveying rank and identity. Then, between the mid-14th and the mid-16th centuries, black entered what historians often describe as its great expansion. Although it never lost its association with witchcraft, mourning, and the devil, it also became the color of civic authority and dignity. Magistrates, judges, and members of the urban patriciate increasingly dressed in black, transforming it into a symbol of respectability. Its symbolism continued to broaden. Judas, whose appearance is scarcely described in scripture, was frequently portrayed in medieval art with a darkened complexion, reddish hair, and yellow garments, visual conventions that would later become firmly established in Christian iconography. By the 15th century, one of the three magi, Balthasar, was increasingly depicted as a black king. Around the same period, Saint Maurice, the patron saint of dyers, also came to be represented with dark skin in popular tradition. And then came a remarkable turning point. Remember the year 1360. It marks the birth of black as the color of fashion. Luxurious sable cloaks became the hallmark of aristocratic elegance, while the young prince who would later become Philip the Good, Duke of Burgundy, adopted black as his lifelong signature. A fashion born in the closing centuries of the Middle Ages has never truly disappeared. Even today, black remains one of the defining colors of elegance. For me personally, the history of black reaches its most profound expression in the work of Pierre Soulages. One of his polyptychs, completed in April 1985, presents an immense wall of luminous black, interrupted only by long diagonal strokes. The surface seems endless, absorbing the viewer's gaze until the painting ceases to resemble an object and becomes an entire environment. Sharp contrasts heighten its sense of isolation from ordinary reality. Black is not an everyday color. It stands apart from every other color and, in a sense, dominates them all. The longer one looks, the more reality itself begins to dissolve. Time slows almost to a standstill. Space loses its familiar boundaries. The darkness draws the eye inward, into a depth where faint traces of other colors begin to emerge. Not merely colors, but subtle shades of memory, emotion, and human experience. Long before black became a symbol of authority, elegance, or even protest, it accompanied humanity as one of its oldest cultural signs. In the civilizations of ancient Mesopotamia and Canaan, black belonged to the deepest layers of the cosmos. It was associated with the underworld, primordial chaos, death, and mystery. The Akkadian language even possessed a specific word, salmu, to describe black, yet its meaning reached far beyond the designation of a simple color. Within the Sumerian and Akkadian traditions, black was the color of the underworld and of the deities who ruled over the realm of the dead, above all Nergal. Even architecture reflected this cosmology. The lowest terraces of the great ziggurats were coated with black bitumen, representing the subterranean waters and the hidden depths of creation. Above them rose red and white levels, together forming a sacred image of the ordered universe. Interestingly, the Sumerians referred to themselves as the black-headed people. Historians generally understand this as a reference to their dark hair and beards, yet the expression also served as a powerful marker of cultural identity, distinguishing them from neighboring peoples. Black diorite possessed a special prestige as well. It was chosen for royal statues and monumental stelae because its dense, dark surface embodied permanence, endurance, and divinely sanctioned authority. In Canaan, however, black acquired a different resonance. In the myths of Ugarit, it became associated with Mot, the god of death, drought, and barrenness, the eternal adversary of Baal, who brought rain, fertility, and life. Black, therefore, came to symbolize the season of withering, the silent interval when the land awaited the return of life-giving waters. It also played a central role in mourning rituals. In times of grief, people laid aside brightly colored garments and clothed themselves in coarse, dark fabrics woven from goat's hair. They covered their heads with ashes and their faces with dust and earth, as though willingly becoming part of the soil from which humanity had been formed, and to which it would one day return. Ancient Ugaritic texts describe these rites almost as a temporary disappearance from the world of the living, a symbolic sharing in the destiny of the dead. For that reason, wearing dark mourning garments without cause was considered an ominous sign, sometimes even a mark of madness. Yet it was these very lands of Canaan that gave the ancient world one of the most celebrated colors in history: purple. The dye was extracted from marine mollusks of the murex family. Its shades ranged from brilliant crimson to tones so deep that they appeared almost black. Purple soon became the color of royalty, prestige, and immense wealth, while the Phoenician trade in purple dye brought extraordinary influence to the cities of the eastern Mediterranean. Its reputation became so great that, over time, the very word Canaanite came to signify not only an inhabitant of the land, but also a merchant. To Egypt, Mesopotamia, Greece, and Rome, Canaan remained forever the land where the most precious color of the ancient world was born. And it is here that our journey naturally leads us to the next chapter in the story of color: red. To enrage a bull, one need only wave a red cloth before it. To enrage a philosopher, it is enough merely to begin discussing the color red. Those unforgettable words belong to Goethe. Red is one of humanity's oldest archetypal colors. Indeed, one of the very first colors that people consciously learned to understand and employ. It was through red that humanity first began to explore the language of color itself. Across countless cultures, red became the color of strength and authority, of passion and fury, of beauty and love. Long before written history, prehistoric communities were already using red ochres to attract attention, mark sacred places, and seek protection. In the painted tombs of ancient Egypt, men were commonly depicted in warm reddish-brown tones, symbolizing courage and vitality, while women appeared in lighter shades of beige and pale yellow. The bodies of the gods, by contrast, shone in gold. Yet red also possessed its darker aspect. In Egyptian thought, it stood in direct opposition to the fertile black silt of the Nile. The surrounding deserts, inhabited by foreign peoples often regarded as enemies, were associated with red. Gradually, the color itself became linked with warfare, danger, and destruction. The god Set, frequently understood as the embodiment of chaos, was portrayed with vivid reddish hair and clothed in red garments. In certain inscriptions, even his name was written in red pigment. Mesopotamia, however, offered another perspective. There, red was connected with creative power, prosperity, and the worship of particular deities. Priests often wore red ceremonial robes, while both fire and blood naturally belonged to the symbolism of the color. Blood, above all, was regarded as the sacred medium through which humanity communicated with the divine. For that reason, throughout much of the ancient world, red became inseparable from the idea of sacrifice. In the Old Testament, animals with reddish coats were often chosen for sacrifice. Their blood was believed to possess a particular strength and richness, making them especially fitting offerings. The early church fathers likewise understood red in two very different ways. Its darker aspect represented falsehood, destruction, suffering, and the fires of the underworld, as described in the book of Revelation, Revelation 12:3-4. In later Christian tradition, red also became associated with Cain. Yet red possessed an equally profound and sacred meaning. It was the color of the burning bush, Exodus 3:2, where the divine revealed itself without consuming the flame. It was the pillar of fire that guided the Israelites through the wilderness, Exodus 13:21. Here, red no longer symbolized destruction, but the fire of divine love and guidance. Above all, Christianity came to associate its deepest crimson with Christ the Redeemer, and with those who gave their lives for the faith. Sacred purple and crimson became the colors of sacrifice, redemption, and eternal witness. From the 13th century onwards, the cardinals of the Church adopted red as the color of their official robes. In this way, red also became the color of authority. The simple crimson cloak worn by Charlemagne at his coronation gradually evolved into the magnificent ceremonial mantle that would become one of the enduring symbols of imperial power. Not only throughout the Middle Ages, but for centuries afterwards, red remained the favorite color of Europe's aristocracy. For countless generations, indeed for millennia, red stood unrivaled. It was admired, celebrated, and regarded as the noblest of colors. And then, quite unexpectedly, at the very height of its triumph in the 12th century, a new rival appeared: blue. That is where our story will continue. In the next episode, we shall explore the remarkable history of blue and discover how it transformed the symbolic language of the Western world. If you enjoyed today's journey, I'd be delighted if you left a like or shared your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next chapter of this fascinating story. My name is Desiro. Thank you for joining me. Until next time.